15 years ago, a young woman vanished in the middle of a Montana winter night, leaving no trace, no note, only a silent cabin and haunting questions for those left behind. Authorities suspected she had met with an accident deep in the woods or fled in a panic, but no body was ever found, and there were hardly any strong leads to pursue, causing the investigation to gradually stall. Yet throughout all that time, this disappearance was never completely forgotten, as some still believed the truth had not been told. Then one day, when old data was re-examined using new technology, a small detail that had previously been overlooked suddenly emerged, forcing the entire case to be looked at again from the beginning. Before we dive into this chilling story and the discoveries that turned upside down everything once believed to be true, let us know where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to follow until the very end. In December 2011, Livingston, Montana was engulfed in a deep cold snap, with thick snow blanketing the roads leading to the remote area around Mill Creek Road. The area featured only a few scattered cabins nestled against the pine forest, isolated from the town center by nearly 10 miles of winding mountain road that frequently iced over when temperatures dropped below 10 degrees Celsius. Against this backdrop, 24-year-old Jenna Hale lived in a one-bedroom rented wooden cabin she shared with her roommate Mara Quinn. Jenna had been in Montana for 6 months, teaching on a contract at Park High School. She had a stable schedule, kept to herself socially, but maintained regular contact with her close friend Elise Ward, a fellow teacher in the same department and the person closest to her besides Mara. On December 20th, Jenna finished a late teaching session and stopped at the Emigrant gas station to buy hot tea before heading home. Security camera footage captured her at 8:15 p.m., marking the last time Jenna was seen in public. As per her usual routine, Jenna was scheduled to join a video call with her sister at 10:30 p.m., but she never connected, never messaged back, and did not respond to any calls. Elise called Mara to check, since Jenna going completely silent during this period was highly unusual. Around 12:20 a.m., Mara drove back to the cabin to check. She noted the door was unlocked. The living room light was still on. There were no signs that luggage or a coat had been taken, but Jenna was not present and the surrounding area was plunged in complete darkness. Seeing no indication that Jenna had left the cabin intentionally, Mara called Elise for support. The two used flashlights to check the perimeter of the cabin and the edge of the nearby forest, but found no movement tracks on the freshly fallen snow. With the weather conditions becoming increasingly dangerous and no way to contact Jenna, they agreed the situation was beyond their ability to search on their own. At 1:17 a.m. on December 21st, the Park County Dispatch officially received the missing person report for Jenna Hale in the Mill Creek Road area. Immediately after the call was logged, the missing person report was classified as high risk due to the low temperatures, complex mountainous terrain, and the fact that the disappearance occurred at night. Following protocol, the initial response team was dispatched, consisting of 2 patrol vehicles and 1 on-duty SAR search and rescue member, arriving at the cabin around 1:45 a.m. The scene was secured as soon as the team verified that Mara and Elise were the reporting parties and no immediate threats were present. The cabin was noted with the front door slightly ajar, showing no signs of forced entry. The living room and kitchen lights were still on, and the heating system was running at a medium setting. Inside, everyday items were in their usual places, as described by Mara. Jenna's shoes remained by the door. Her winter coat hung untouched on the hook. Her phone was not found in the cabin, but her purse and wallet were placed on the table next to the sofa. The team only documented the location, distance, and condition of each item, avoiding any disturbance or in-depth analysis at that point, as the primary priority was to determine whether Jenna was still near the cabin. Mara and Elise were separated for initial statements. Both provided consistent timelines. Jenna left work around 7:40 p.m., appeared at the Emigrant gas station at 8:15 p.m., and had no further contact afterward. Mara said the last time she heard any noise in the cabin was around 9 p.m., but she wasn't certain whether Jenna had come home by then. Elise confirmed the 10:30 p.m. video call schedule and stated that Jenna missing the appointment without notice was completely out of character. Based on the statements and the cabin's condition, a preliminary timeline gap from 8:15 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. was established as unaccounted for, while environmental conditions were deteriorating rapidly with cold winds and steady light snowfall. Assessing the risk that Jenna might be in distress outdoors, the team elevated the priority level and switched the case to emergency search mode, while requesting additional SAR resources and establishing a search radius around the cabin immediately that night. SAR forces were mobilized right after the case was upgraded to emergency search status, with the goal of covering a 1-mile radius around the cabin before weather conditions became too hazardous for continued outdoor operations. Starting at 2:20 a.m., the search team established the cabin of Jenna Hale as the starting point and divided into 3 coordinated groups: 2-foot patrol teams, 1 small ATV, all-terrain vehicle team, and 1 K9 unit specialized in tracking human scent in snowy conditions. The search pattern followed an expanding circle model from a 200-meter radius, expanding to 400 meters, 800 meters, and up to a maximum of 1 mile, adjusted to actual terrain. The area featured a mix of gentle slopes, brush, snowdrifts, and dense pine stands, so teams used high-powered lights combined with GPS devices to stay within assigned boundaries. The K9 unit led toward the northeast, the area with a secondary trail into the forest and the direction of strong winds, which could retain scent if Jenna had left the cabin for a short time before heavy snow covered it. However, the K9 only gave a weak alert at a point near the tree line, about 60 meters from the cabin, then quickly lost the trail due to the fresh snow completely covering any scent track. The foot patrol team checked the southern side, where the terrain was flatter but featured low brush and possible temporary shelter spots for someone in distress. They marked each checked location with reflective stakes to avoid duplication and scanned for compressed or disturbed snow patches, but found no footprints, drag marks, or mechanical traces indicating recent movement. The ATV team was deployed westward along the edge of Mill Creek Road access, where tire tracks might remain if a vehicle had left the area during the suspected time frame of Jenna's disappearance. However, heavy snowfall over the previous 2 hours had covered the road completely, erasing all traces. They only noted several wind-created natural snowdrifts, but none bearing characteristics of drag marks or heavy movement. As the search radius expanded to 1 mile, the SR team flagged 3 high-risk areas. First, a section of slope beside a snow-filled gully, where someone could slip and fall without leaving surface signs on fresh snow. Second, a scattered cluster of brush near the edge of a shallow frozen stream, capable of concealing an unconscious person. And third, a dense forest area to the east, with severely limited visibility. All 3 areas were thoroughly checked using wide-angle lights and basic handheld FLIR thermal devices carried by the patrol team, but no thermal returns were detected beyond small animals and warmer tree trunks. After correlating the entire search pattern with environmental conditions, the SR team concluded that if Jenna had truly been within 1 mile of the cabin, they would have had a reasonable chance of detecting some sign of her, whether footprints, direction of travel, fabric scraps, dropped items, or any anomaly on the snow surface. However, all checked areas showed no evidence of pedestrian activity in the preceding 4-5 hours. The rapid response search phase concluded around 4:50 a.m. with the compiled report stating the entire 1-mile radius had been covered. High-risk points had been checked, but no direct indication of Jenna's location or direction of travel had been found. Preliminary conclusion: the area surrounding the cabin provided no clear direction of travel, no evidence that Jenna left on foot, no signs of presence in the natural environment, and no basis to confirm she had moved through the snow since the suspected time of disappearance. The no direction of travel status became a key point in the early phase of the search. Immediately after completing the rapid near-radius search without finding any direct trace of Jenna Hale's presence or direction of departure, SAR Command shifted to an extended line-based search strategy based on the actual terrain structure around Mill Creek Road. Maps were reviewed to identify the three most plausible directions a person might have traveled in dark, low-temperature conditions: Mill Creek Trailhead to the northeast, Paradise Valley to the south, and Deep Creek to the northwest. All areas with trails or transitional terrain that could attract someone seeking shelter or who became disoriented. A mixed force was deployed, including foot teams, snowmobile teams, streamside search teams, and a ground-based FLIR drone unit in support before helicopters were mobilized at first light. However, due to overnight snowfall covering all trail markings, every search line had to begin at a very basic level, with every point traveled being marked to prevent overlap. The Mill Creek Trailhead direction was prioritized first, as it was the main trail leading upward and one Jenna had used during weekend runs. The team approached from the south side of the trailhead and split into two branches, one along the main trail, the other sweeping the adjacent sparse forest area. The first team noted a series of faint footprints, approximately 20-25 centimeters long, scattered about 40 meters off the main trail. However, due to fresh snow cover, the edges were blurred, making it impossible to determine when they were made. The shape suggested they could not be ruled out as human, but neither could temporary bipedal animal tracks or prints made before heavy snowfall be excluded. The team used GPS markers to log this as an anomaly point, but no accompanying items or continued travel signs were present. Farther into the forest, the trail disappeared under thick snow, forcing the team to manually narrow their check to individual tree clusters. All yielded no results. In the Paradise Valley direction, the team deployed along two lines parallel to the two-lane road and the forest edge near sparse ranches. They focused on uneven snow surfaces, fences, livestock areas, and points likely to retain traces if someone passed through. A circular depression in the snow beside the trail was found, but after measuring diameter and depth, the team determined it was an elk hoof print, unrelated to a human. No extended footprints or scattered items were found over more than 2 miles of travel along Paradise Valley, and the team had to conclude the area provided no useful information for determining departure from the cabin. The Deep Creek direction, though harder to access, was still included because of its steep terrain, shallow streams, and small rock cavities that could serve as natural shelters for someone in distress. The combined water-land patrol team advanced from downstream, checking frozen stream sections and open water areas. Probing poles were used on the ice surface to check for recent breaks, in case the victim had fallen through thin ice. However, the entire checked length only showed thermal expansion cracks, with no mechanical breaks or heavy objects having fallen through. A faint footprint was recorded near a tree trunk 15 meters from the stream edge. This print was deeper than surrounding animal tracks, but lacked any continuing sequence, leading the team to suspect it might be an old print or one made by a vertically dropped object. Surrounding snow was flagged for sampling, but its value was severely limited due to weather conditions. By 7:10 a.m., the Park County helicopter was deployed, equipped with an infrared FLIR system to sweep all three areas from the air. Flying in a spiral pattern outward from the cabin to nearly a 3-mile radius, the system detected numerous small heat points, but all were animals or reflections from warmer rocks. No signal exhibited the thermal characteristics of a human body, despite multiple passes over key areas. Snow drifts, clearings, forest edges, and stream banks showed no unusual heat patches or large thermal signatures, suggesting either Jenna was no longer within range or, if present, had been completely masked by thick snow absorption, rendering FLIR ineffective. While flying low over Mill Creek Trailhead, the crew noted a slight snow subsidence, forming a roughly 1-meter-long depression, but the ground team rechecked and concluded it was natural snow settling due to a decayed tree root, lacking any human movement pattern. By the end of the morning, after all extended lines had been systematically searched and fully documented, the compiled report showed that none of the three expanded areas produced identifying leads. The faint traces recorded could not be confirmed as related to the time of Jenna's disappearance. Trails showed no continuing movement sequence, streams and ice remained unbroken, and FLIR detected no human body signals within the searched range. Final conclusion of the extended search phase: no evidence whatsoever establishing Jenna Hale's direction of departure from the cabin, and all three plausible directions failed to provide any basis to narrow the search area or reconstruct her path of departure from the area on the night of December 20th, 2011. The expanded search yielded no viable leads, causing the investigative focus to temporarily shift to gathering witness statements in order to accurately reconstruct Jenna Hale's entire movements on December 20th, with the goal of determining whether any changes in her routine, relationships, or schedule might suggest a context for why she left the cabin that night or encountered an incident before reaching her destination. The investigation team split into two groups. One group handled interviews with all colleagues at Park High School, while the other worked with neighbors along Mill Creek Road, the staff at the Emigrant gas station, and any individuals who might have seen Jenna between approximately 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. The school investigation team noted that Jenna finished her last class around 4:10 p.m. and left the teacher's lounge around 4:30 p.m. in a normal mood, showing no signs of stress or conflict. Three colleagues, including Elise Ward, confirmed that Jenna left school earlier than usual to avoid heavy evening snowfall. One office staff member reported that Jenna stopped by around 3 p.m. to exchange teaching materials, displaying a stable demeanor and making no mention of any plans to leave town or any sudden intentions. When cross-checked with the school entrance gate camera, investigators confirmed that Jenna's vehicle left the parking lot at 4:41 p.m., heading directly south on US 89, consistent with the route from school to the cabin. In the residential area along Mill Creek Road, the team interviewing neighbors recorded only one person who saw a vehicle similar to Jenna's passing through the area around 7:55 p.m. But this witness could not confirm it was definitely Jenna's vehicle due to limited lighting and falling snow. A notable detail was the statement about hearing an engine running slower than normal on the slope near the cabin, though the timing was not precise enough to tie it to any specific point in the timeline. At the Emigrant gas station, the evening shift employee confirmed that Jenna stopped to buy hot tea, paid by card, and left shortly afterward. Security camera footage provided clear information at 8:15 p.m. Jenna exited the store with no one accompanying or approaching her. One customer at the adjacent pump reported seeing nothing unusual, only recalling that Jenna seemed hurried but not panicked. Combining all witness statements, the timeline for the day of disappearance was reconstructed as follows. Jenna left school at 4:41 p.m. No intermediate activity was confirmed until 8:15 p.m. When she was captured on camera at Emigrant, the period from 8:15 p.m. to approximately 8:50 p.m. represents a reasonable travel time from the gas station to the cabin. However, no witness definitively saw Jenna on the route from Emigrant to Mill Creek Road. Around 9 p.m., Maura reported hearing a faint sound from the direction of the kitchen, but it could not be confirmed whether this indicated Jenna's arrival at the cabin. From 9 p.m. to 10:30 p.m., the time Jenna was expected for a video call with her sister, no witness or camera recorded any activity by her. When comparing Maura's and Elise's statements, investigators noted a minor inconsistency. Elise stated she texted Jenna at 9:50 p.m. and observed the read receipt, while Maura claimed that from the time she entered the cabin around 9:15 p.m., Jenna's bedroom light remained off, and she heard no further sounds. Although not a major contradiction, this difference was flagged for follow-up due to its potential relevance to the exact time Jenna was last using her phone. Another point under consideration, Elise emphasized that Jenna never changed family video call plans on her own initiative, especially during the period close to Christmas when the family maintained frequent contact. She also affirmed that Jenna was not someone who went out at night, hiked alone after dark, went trail walking in dangerous weather, and certainly had no reason to leave the cabin without her coat or phone, two items still not found inside the cabin. Combining all witness statements, the investigative team reached a preliminary conclusion that there is no social, psychological, or routine-based evidence indicating Jenna voluntarily left the cabin on the night of December 20th. All data points to her loss of contact being abnormal for her habits. The preliminary timeline was entered into the case file, clearly divided into independently verified points, points based solely on witness statements, and points that remain unverified. This became a critical foundation for cross-referencing with subsequent data in determining Jenna Hale's direction of travel and the circumstances of her disappearance during the period from 8:15 p.m. to after 10:30 p.m. that night. After completing the timeline based on witness statements, the investigation team moved on to exploiting Jenna Hale's phone data to more precisely determine the time points and possible locations of any incident. Since Jenna used ATN, investigators submitted an emergency request under exigent circumstances, procedures to extract call logs, data logs, messages, and cell tower records related to the evening of December 20th. The carrier's report provided a detailed list of connection sessions, including numerous entries showing that Jenna's phone, although not making calls or performing large data operations, still automatically pinged the nearest cell towers on a regular cycle. The data showed that from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., the phone connected to towers along US 89, fully consistent with the journey from Park High School toward Emigrant. Notably, a ping at 8:14 p.m. registered a connection to the Emigrant North Sector 2 tower, exactly matching the camera timestamp at the gas station. Thereafter, from 8:14 p.m. to 9:30 p.m., the phone made no calls or data operations large enough to generate detailed logs, but still recorded automatic pings at greater distances, including 2 pings at 8:42 p.m. and 9:11 p.m., connecting to a tower in the direction of Mill Creek Road, indicating the phone was moving or had entered an area of poorer coverage. Most significantly, however, was the ping at 9:58 p.m., recorded as the last time Jenna's device connected to any network infrastructure. This ping originated from the Mill Creek Ridge Sector 1 tower, a small tower with narrow coverage running along the mountainside and only rarely registering devices unless the user is standing at certain specific points, namely, the turnoff road to Jenna's cabin and a short section of the forest trail behind it. The 9:58 p.m. timestamp was immediately cross-referenced with the witness-based timeline. It falls precisely between 2 key points: the time Mara believed she heard an indistinct sound and the time Elise attempted to contact Jenna at 9:50 p.m., but received no clear response beyond a possible read receipt. Combining the ping data with these events, investigators recognized that the window of approximately 9:45 p.m. to 10 p.m. is the period during which both witnesses could not verify Jenna's presence inside the cabin, and also the only time her phone registered a signal near the cabin. This narrowed the area of interest to a very small zone, no more than 250 meters from the cabin door to the northern forest edge, where the Mill Creek Ridge Sector 1 coverage perfectly aligns. The investigation team marked the location of the final ping on a 1/5000 scale topographic map, layered by elevation and tree density, to determine whether any plausible travel route existed from the cabin to the signal point. GIS analysts built a signal propagation simulation model using software to confirm the tower's actual coverage under snowy conditions. The results showed that the 9:58 p.m. ping could not have occurred if the phone was deep inside the cabin or more than 300 meters south of it. Thus, the final ping location could only occur under 2 possibilities. The phone was inside the cabin near the north-facing window at 9:58 p.m., or Jenna was standing outside the cabin in an open area where the signal could be more easily received. In the specialist report, investigators noted the second possibility as more likely because the old wooden cabin design typically causes signal loss, making indoor pings difficult to achieve. Correlating this information with Mara's statement created another noteworthy point in the file. Mara claimed that from the time she heard the sound until she checked inside the cabin, Jenna's bedroom light was off, and there was no sign of a lit phone screen or notification sound. yet that same window coincides with the last ping from Jenna's phone. This was flagged as an indirect inconsistency, not strong enough to establish suspicion, but sufficient to require closer monitoring of Mara's statements in the following phase. After identifying the final signal zone, the investigation map was updated. The cabin became the central point, with the 300-meter radius to the north marked in red, while other directions were downgraded in priority. Attaching the 9:58 p.m. ping to the overall timeline created a time frame assessed as the last technically confirmed point, serving as the foundation for narrowing the search area and analyzing behavior during Jenna Hale's final recorded hours of activity. The ping location was regarded as the single most important piece of information since the start of the investigation, being the only objective evidence of where Jenna's phone was present precisely during the period Mara could not prove her own whereabouts, and also when Elise stated the message sent to Jenna showed a read receipt, but received no reply. All of this information was entered into the case file as a technical timestamp, providing the basis for evaluating subsequent hypotheses regarding direction of travel and the circumstances leading to Jenna's disappearance immediately after the phone signal ceased completely. Forensics returned to Jenna Hale's cabin early on the morning of December 21st, after the phone data provided the final ping location near the cabin, making a re-examination of the scene more necessary to search for any physical traces that may have been overlooked in the initial survey. The forensics team, consisting of 3 technicians and 1 scene investigator, secured the area, establishing a wider scene perimeter than before to avoid contamination from overnight search activities. The cabin was noted to remain in the same condition as when SAR personnel departed: lights on, heating system maintained at 62 degrees Fahrenheit, front door still ajar but unlocked, and no new footprints in the snow near the porch. Examination began at the front door, where technicians used low-angle lighting to search for drag marks or compression marks, resulting in the discovery of a narrow drag mark approximately 18 centimeters long, running from the edge of the threshold inward. Although no clear shape was visible, the drag mark showed low compression, suggesting it may have been caused by a light object or the flat edge of a shoe, but without sufficient characteristics to identify the source. Adjacent to the drag mark was a small streak of reddish-brown soil, drier than the surrounding winter ground, adhering to the wooden edge of the doorframe, possibly fallen from a shoe sole or object as someone passed through. This soil sample was collected using a sterile swab and placed in a sealed paper evidence bag for later analysis. The absence of new footprints outside the cabin was consistent with heavy overnight snowfall, but it also complicated determining the precise timing or direction of movement of any involved person. Moving inside the cabin, the forensics team began scene processing in sequence from the entryway to the main living area. On the mat just inside the door, they found a small 6 mm fragment of gray-blue fabric that did not match the material of Jenna's coat, scarf, wool items, or cabin rugs. The fiber was collected with sterile tweezers and separately sealed. On the thin layer of dust beside the low wooden table, an indistinct lateral smear was present, sufficient to indicate that an object had been dragged or someone had braced their hand on the surface sometime recently. No furniture was significantly disturbed, no signs of items being dropped or thrown, and there were absolutely no indicators of a struggle. At the table next to the sofa, where Jenna's wallet and purse were found during the initial check, technicians noted the wallet remained in its original position, with cards and documents undisturbed. The phone was absent from the cabin, consistent with the device having pinged outside. The kitchen area was examined under UV light for bodily fluids, with negative results. All surfaces were in normal condition, with no faint fingerprints or unusual wiping marks. The sink showed no recently used utensils. On the wooden floor near the kitchen, another small patch of similar soil was discovered, the dirt ground into very fine particles, indicating pressure from a shoe or heavy object. This additional sample was collected for comparison. In Jenna's bedroom, the bed remained undisturbed, with no signs of recent occupancy, no torn fabric, and no dragged items. Her winter coat and gloves still hung on the hook near the door, reinforcing the hypothesis that Jenna did not leave the cabin intentionally in sub-zero outdoor temperatures. Under the floor beside the bed, another fiber, this time white, was found, but initial examination showed the material consistent with Jenna's bedding, so it was deemed unrelated. The window system was thoroughly checked. All were closed, with no signs of prying, cracking, or external footprints leading inward. This eliminated the possibility of nighttime entry through a window. Outside the cabin, the porch area and the ground adjacent to the forest edge were reswept using surface scanners and oblique lighting. Fresh snow had erased most traces, but a slight shallow depression near the porch edge, of unclear shape, was documented and photographed for potential further analysis. Although insufficient to determine timing, its presence together with the door drag mark formed a small but consistent set of anomalies. The team also carefully examined the entire cabin perimeter within a 10-meter radius. No dropped items, no clothing or scarf clues, and no signs of Jenna walking from the cabin toward the forest were found. The complete absence of footprints or drag marks in the snow, under conditions that should have left very clear traces if a person had moved, was recorded by forensics as a key factor. The forensics team sealed all collected evidence: the gray-blue fiber, 2 foreign soil samples, along with scene photographs and position diagrams. Everything was immediately transferred to the Park County Crime Lab for component analysis, origin determination, and comparison with materials inside the cabin or from the surrounding area. The preliminary conclusion from the forensics team after the examination was that the cabin showed no signs of resistance, no evidence of Jenna being attacked or coming to harm inside the house. There were no signs of a struggle, no unusually displaced furniture, and no blood or bodily fluids. However, the cabin did show signs of someone entering or exiting around the time of disappearance: the drag mark near the door, the foreign soil streak not matching the surrounding ground, and a fiber not belonging to Jenna's belongings. Although all are indirect traces, they support the possibility that the event leading to Jenna's disappearance did not occur inside the cabin, but may have taken place just outside the threshold or in the immediate porch area during the window of 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. The time frame corresponding to the final phone ping and the period when no witness could confirm Jenna's presence. All signs point toward an absence of struggle inside the cabin, making the immediate exterior and the surrounding approach the most relevant zones for continued investigative focus. After completing the first on-site examination and fully collecting data from all search phases, as well as analyzing the timeline and cell phone pings, the investigative team moved into the hypothesis evaluation phase to determine the most appropriate focus for the next steps. 3 main hypotheses were placed into the analysis framework. 1. Jenna Hale left the cabin voluntarily. 2. Jenna suffered an accident in the woods. And 3. Jenna disappeared due to human factors, including conflict, coercion, or concealment behavior. The first hypothesis, voluntary departure, was evaluated based on behavior, habits, belongings, and the condition of the cabin. The data showed that Jenna did not take her winter coat, gloves, wallet, or any essentials needed to move in sub-0 degree F weather. Her phone had no location services turned on and made no calls after 8:15, and her consistent 10:30 video call habit with family had never been skipped before. The cabin showed no signs of rushed packing, no missing items, and the bed did not indicate she left with the intention of returning. All witnesses confirmed Jenna had no plans to leave town and exhibited no psychological distress on December 20th. Based on all the facts, the voluntary departure hypothesis was assessed as having no realistic basis and was ruled out from the list of primary possibilities. The second hypothesis, accident in the woods, was analyzed based on terrain, weather conditions, and search coverage. If Jenna had left the cabin on foot and suffered an accident, she would have left footprints, drag marks, or dropped items, especially since heavy snow had not immediately covered fresh movement tracks. However, SAR teams thoroughly searched a 1-mile radius and all 3 extended lines, including high-risk areas such as slopes, snowshoots, trails, and dense forest, but found absolutely no matching evidence. FLIR equipment on the helicopter also detected no human body heat signatures. Additionally, the cabin showed no indication that Jenna had dressed appropriately for being outdoors at night, and without a coat, survival time in sub-0 degree F forest conditions would be extremely short. Yet FLIR should still have picked up residual heat signals in the first few hours. There were no broken ice patches, no displaced soil, and no items belonging to Jenna found across the extensive searched area. Therefore, the available data did not fit the pattern of a natural accident, causing this hypothesis to be significantly narrowed and nearly ruled out. The third hypothesis, disappearance due to human factors, became the focus after the first two were eliminated, based on on-site realities. This hypothesis considered the possibility that Jenna came into contact with another person between 8:50 and 10 p.m., resulting in conflict or an incident right near the cabin, after which her presence or movement was concealed. Key elements supporting this hypothesis included a small drag mark at the door, soil streaks, inconsistent with the natural ground around the cabin, an unfamiliar gray-blue fiber not matching any of Jenna's belongings, and the complete absence of movement tracks in the snow, despite clear evidence that someone had entered or exited the cabin. Furthermore, the 9:58 phone ping placed the device very close to the cabin during a time window when both witnesses, Mara and Elise, could not confirm Jenna's presence. The period from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock also overlapped with Mara's statement that she did not see Jenna despite hearing a small sound in the cabin, creating an unexplained gap if only voluntary departure or accident were considered. When combining all data, the investigative team determined that the human factors hypothesis had the highest degree of fit with the sequence of events. The cabin showed no signs of struggle, yet the door was left ajar. No footprints led away, but small marks were present near the porch. Jenna's phone made its final ping outside the cabin before going completely dark, and the timing of lost contact coincided precisely with when Jenna was expected to make her family call, a habit she had never missed. Ultimately, the analysis group concluded that no data fully explained Jenna's disappearance without involving human factors. Although limited, the physical evidence consistently suggested an event occurred at or very near the cabin door, and the way the scene was arranged aligned more with third-party intervention or someone luring Jenna outside than with any spontaneous scenario. Therefore, the third hypothesis was designated as the central focus of the investigation, becoming the only remaining direction capable of explaining the emerging chain of facts surrounding Jenna Hale's traceless disappearance on the night of December 20, 2011. Once the human factors hypothesis was placed at the center, the investigative team shifted to thoroughly analyzing the closest relationships of Jenna Hale, particularly with the two individuals who had direct contact on the evening of December 20th, Mara Quinn, her housemate, and Elise Ward, her close colleague friend. Orders were issued to extract electronic data from work emails, text messages, chat histories on popular applications, and personal correspondence stored in Jenna's Google account. In the 3 months prior to her disappearance, emails between Jenna and Mara showed fairly normal division of household duties, but preserved text messages began revealing tense exchanges starting in early December. A December 3rd message from Jenna to Elise, stating, "Mara lately is on edge, not sure what set her off," indicated that cabin relations were no longer entirely stable. A December 7th message from Jenna to Mara about limiting guests at the cabin, and Mara's irritated response revealed disagreements over shared space usage rights. In Elise's data, investigators found a series of messages in which Jenna shared that Mara sometimes displayed emotional possessiveness, especially when Jenna spent more time working with Elise at school. Although the messages did not show severe conflict, they revealed a mismatch in expectations and perceptions, and investigators noted the tension level between Jenna and Mara in the week before the disappearance as noteworthy. When analyzing Elise's statements, investigators observed minor discrepancies between her initial statement and her supplemental statement in the second round of interviews. Specifically, Elise initially said her last text to Jenna was around 9:50 p.m. and appeared to have been read, but in the supplemental statement, she described being not sure if the message was read or just a system status. This was not considered intentional falsehood, but was still noted because this time frame directly related to the final 9:58 phone ping. Another anomaly appeared when Elise was asked about recent instances of Mara appearing stressed. Her answers were vague, while preserved messages on her device showed Jenna had specifically shared details about 2 minor arguments concerning cabin rent splitting and shared vehicle use. This lack of consistency was not sufficient to designate Elise as a suspect, but reinforced the assessment that the internal cabin context was far from normal, as initially described by both Mara and Elise. Meanwhile, Mara's text messages to Jenna on December 20th, before the disappearance, showed a brief exchange at 5:12 p.m. Mara asked, "When are you coming back?" and Jenna replied, "Probably after stopping by Emigrant to get tea." There was no overt tension, but notably, around 8:52 p.m. Consistent with Jenna's travel time from the gas station back to the cabin, Mara sent an unread message asking, "Where are you?" Investigators cross-referenced this timing with Mara's statement that she didn't know whether Jenna had returned to the cabin, raising the question, why did Mara proactively inquire about Jenna's location at the exact moment Jenna was highly likely to be very close to the cabin? When considering motive, the investigative team identified 3 potential conflict clusters: everyday household disagreements, issues regarding personal emotional boundaries, and unresolved simmering tensions related to long-term shared space in harsh winter conditions. Although no evidence proved any argument escalated beyond normal levels, the electronic data clearly showed an imbalance in relational expectations between Jenna and Mara, and Jenna had shared feelings of discomfort with Elise about Mara tracking her schedule too closely. In overall assessment, the team determined that the relationship among the 3 formed a triangular structure with emotional dependency skewed toward Mara, accompanied by mild controlling behaviors in messages. When combined with the final phone ping, the drag mark at the door, and the absence of snow movement tracks, investigators noted this as an initial foundation for a potential motive linked to internal cabin conflict, and these socio-behavioral facts were entered into the case file as elements with direct potential connection to the previously established human factors hypothesis. The analysis of relationships and internal tensions among Jenna, Mara, and Elise strengthened the human factors hypothesis, but when matched against legal evidentiary requirements, the investigative team had to acknowledge a series of serious deficiencies that prevented the case from advancing further. First, there was no body or any direct evidence proving Jenna had died or suffered violence. Although small traces such as the unfamiliar fiber, inconsistent soil streaks, and faint drag marks near the door suggested possible physical interaction outside the cabin porch, they remained insufficient to determine the nature of the event, degree of force, or whether Jenna left the cabin alive or under duress. Second, all individuals confirmed to have had contact with Jenna on December 20th, colleagues at school, gas station staff, neighbors along Mill Creek Road, provided no direct information about her final minutes before disappearance. No one saw Jenna enter the cabin, and no one observed any strangers or suspicious vehicles near the area during the critical time frame. The minor inconsistencies in Mara's and Elise's statements were not strong enough to build a criminal hypothesis, as there was no supporting physical evidence or independent witness testimony. Third, although the 9:58 ping narrowed the last known location of Jenna's phone, it was not precise enough to pinpoint where any incident occurred. The Mill Creek Ridge Sector 1 cell tower coverage area was small, but not accurate enough to distinguish whether the phone was inside the cabin, on the porch, or a few hundred meters north. There were no surveillance cameras in the remote area to verify whether Jenna returned to the cabin or was intercepted before entering. Heavy snowfall had erased any possible footprints or drag marks that might reveal direction of movement. There was no blood trail, no signs of heavy impact on the ground or structures, and no personal items left outside the cabin. With these three core deficiencies, no body, no direct witnesses, no confirmed incident location, every hypothesis, regardless of varying degrees of fit, remained at the level of inference. The team conducted dozens of additional interviews throughout 2012, re-examined the cabin 3 times, re-ran weather models for the night of December 20th to assess the possibility of an accident farther away, but no new signs emerged. Soil and fiber samples sent to the state laboratory yielded no breakthroughs. The gray-blue fiber did not match Jenna's clothing, but also did not match anything belonging to Mara or Elise, and the soil samples showed no organic material related to a human body. Financial history checks revealed Jenna's credit cards had no activity after December 20th. The phone never powered back on, her vehicle remained parked at the cabin. Her passport and identification were not taken. All of this increased the mystery of the case, but still provided no viable investigative direction. By early 2013, after more than a year of active handling, the Park County Sheriff's Office concluded there were no new leads and no legal basis to pursue further intrusive measures, such as expanded search warrants on any individual's property. In the final summary report, the lead investigator stated, "All available resources have been utilized to the maximum extent permitted by law. However, no evidence establishing a crime or death has been found. Therefore, the case is temporarily suspended from active investigation." In June 2013, Jenna Hale's file was officially transferred to the Park County Cold Case Unit with the status unresolved missing person. No confirmed criminal element. The case was closed but not terminated, remaining open for reactivation should new evidence emerge. From that point, the matter entered complete stalemate, a disappearance in the middle of a Montana winter that for more than a decade, no one could explain. During the period when Jenna Hale's file resided in the Cold Case Unit, from 2013 to 2023, the unit conducted 3 periodic reviews to assess the potential for reopening the investigation should new evidence or advanced analytical technology become available. The first review in 2014 was performed by a new investigator taking over the file. The report noted that all sealed evidence remained in original condition, but no technology available at that time could enhance analysis of the soil or fiber samples beyond previous conclusions. In 2014, no new witnesses appeared. No phone signals reactivated, no unusual financial activity related to Jenna occurred, and no reports surfaced of matching remains found in Montana or neighboring states. Conclusion of the 2014 review: no new data, continue storage as cold case. The second review in 2017 was conducted more thoroughly due to advances in mobile data retrieval tools and signal simulation. However, the 2011-era cell tower system did not retain sufficient metadata to accurately reconstruct the device's movement at the time of the final 9:58 p.m. Picanal. Footprint analysis technology could not be applied because the snow had melted and the entire environment around the cabin had changed with the seasons, making recovery of old field data impossible. The 2017 review concluded that the case's key elements, lack of body, lack of direct witnesses, lack of confirmed incident location, remained unchanged from the beginning, with no feasible expansion of investigation from existing evidence. Additionally, the passage of time reduced the reliability of some witness statements, as memories began to degrade, rendering re-interviews of limited value. This review also recorded a significant change. Mara Quinn had left Montana at the end of 2016 to relocate to Spokane, Washington. This was noted in the file, but not deemed suspicious, as no evidence suggested Mara was directly involved in Jenna's disappearance, and she departed years after investigative pressure had ceased. Elise Ward continued living in the Livingston area, maintaining her teaching job and exhibiting no behavior of investigative interest. The third review, in 2020, occurred amid improvements in DNA forensics and trace material analysis, but still offered no practical new approach to the physical samples in the Jenna Hale case. The gray-blue fiber was too small for DNA extraction, and the collected soil showed no biological markers or distinctive components that could link to a more specific geographic location beyond what was analyzed in 2012. In particular, digital data from the previous decade, including message histories, emails, and network logs, could not be further expanded because platforms had altered storage structures or no longer retained data beyond long retention periods. The 2020 Cold Case Review team noted that most foundational information in the case had reached its exploitation limit, and any breakthrough would require entirely new evidence or fresh testimony from involved parties. However, across all three reviews, no new witnesses emerged, no unidentified missing person reports matched, and no compatible remains were discovered in Montana, Idaho, or Wyoming. The passage of time also diminished the investigative value of many indirect traces. The original cabin where Jenna lived had been renovated by the owner, with new flooring and doors installed, rendering further scene re-examination legally meaningless. The snow routes where SAR had noted a few depressions had completely changed with the seasons, making any attempt to reconstruct the scene unfounded. The 2020 report concluded that, after nearly a decade, the Jenna Hale case still lacked the three decisive elements: no body, no confession, and no new evidence capable of altering the nature of the file. Therefore, it continued to be maintained in the cold case with no reactivation indicators list, awaiting new data from technology or from individuals. Overall, throughout these 10 years, the file remained completely static until circumstances shifted in an entirely unforeseen direction. In 2024, when the Park County Sheriff's Office launched a pilot program to reanalyze cold cases using new technology, Jenna Hale's case was prioritized due to its mysterious nature and the large data gaps that could benefit from modern technical tools. Detective Daniel Kincaid, an investigator experienced in mobile signal analysis and microdata processing, was assigned to receive the entire case file. From the very first week, Kincaid reviewed all physical evidence, crime scene descriptions, search maps, and digital data that had previously been limited by 2011 technology. The first step he took was reanalysis of cell site data, re-evaluating the location of Jenna's phone's final ping at 9:58 p.m. Advances in location estimation algorithms, based on signal strength, connection stability, and angle of arrival from cell sectors, allowed Kincaid to reconstruct the coverage pattern of Mill Creek Ridge Sector 1 in greater detail than ever before. By integrating modern 3D terrain data from the USGS and a snow-induced signal attenuation model, he determined that the 9:58 ping could not have originated from inside the cabin, but could only have occurred when the device was in an open area, within a narrow signal corridor extending from the cabin porch to the dense tree line to the north, approximately 180 to 300 meters long. This significantly narrowed the area of interest compared to the 2011 assessment. Kincaid marked this corridor on the map and added it to the list of locations requiring on-site field verification to cross-reference environmental materials. The next step involved soil spectroscopy, a new technique that allows comparison of old soil samples with the statewide Montana soil database. The state laboratory still retained the soil samples collected from the cabin in 2011 under proper preservation conditions, making analysis feasible. Using absorption and reflectance spectroscopy, the cabin soil sample was analyzed across 42 mineral indicators, including clay content, silica, iron oxide, and trace elements. When cross-referenced with the digitized statewide soil map, Kincaid discovered a 90% match between the anomalous soil sample found in the cabin and a narrow band of soil located at Mill Creek Ravine, a deep ravine about 0.7 miles north of the cabin, outside the rapid search perimeter in 2011, because the route was then completely snow-covered and unsuitable for nighttime vehicle access. Mill Creek Ravine has distinctive geology, a surface soil layer rich in fine-grained Montmorillonite clay, mixed with iron oxide, nearly perfect match with the soil found on the cabin door threshold and the small crushed soil particles under the kitchen floor. This was the first time in over 10 years of analysis that a clear physical indicator emerged, linking Jenna's cabin to a specific location in the forest. Kincaid immediately added the ravine to the Level 1 priority focus points list, requesting detailed topographic mapping of the area to assess the likelihood of an incident, movement or concealment occurring there. While analyzing material evidence, Kincaid continued to re-examine the digital devices collected in 2011, including Jenna's personal camera, which had previously been deemed irrelevant because the memory card contained no noteworthy images. However, using next-generation data recovery software, he retrieved a sequence of deleted photos that had been overwritten. One of the photos, showing a forest scene at dusk, most likely taken during Jenna's walk a few days before her disappearance, revealed two human silhouettes standing near the tree line, in an area where, according to Jenna's message to Elise, she had taken trail photos for class documentation. Analysis of lighting and shadow direction helped determine the relative distance between the camera and the two figures. The estimated location was no more than 300 meters north of the cabin, exactly matching the cell site signal corridor Kincaid had just identified. Although facial identification was impossible, the presence of two human figures in an area where Jenna supposedly walked alone raised a critical question: was this a place she regularly met someone before disappearing? Kincaid cross-referenced the estimated coordinates from lighting data with the topographic map, and noted that the tree line in the photo was at the beginning of the path down to the ravine, suggesting Jenna may have visited or been more familiar with this area than the original case file indicated. When combining the three new data sources, the narrowed cell site signal corridor of her final activity, the soil spectroscopy results linking the cabin to the ravine, and the recovered photo showing human figures near the ravine entrance, a complete pattern began to emerge. The ravine was not only a location potentially connected to the soil sample, but also a site of human activity related to Jenna in the time frame close to her disappearance. Kincaid placed the ravine at the center of the reinvestigation, determining it was the first location that needed on-site field survey and environmental analysis after more than 12 years since Jenna Hale vanished without a trace on Mill Creek Road. With the new data obtained from cell site analysis, soil spectroscopy, and recovered photos from Jenna's camera, Detective Daniel Kincaid moved into the phase of in-depth timeline reconstruction for the 8:10 p.m. window, considered the critical time frame in the entire disappearance. The goal was to integrate all old data with new technical data to precisely determine Jenna's final movements and verify the alignment of these time points with Mara's behavior. Kincaid began by reconstructing Jenna's journey from the Emigrant gas station to the cabin based on the 8:15 p.m. camera footage. Given light snowfall and US 89 not being fully icy at that time, the drive would have taken approximately 25-30 minutes. Thus, Jenna likely arrived in the cabin area between 8:40 and 8:50 p.m. When combined with the 8:42 p.m. and 9:11 p.m. mobile pings, cell site data confirmed that Jenna's phone had entered the Mill Creek Road signal area, consistent with her returning to or at least approaching the cabin. Kincaid continued analyzing the final 9:58 p.m. ping. Thanks to the new signal model, the ping location was narrowed to a tight signal corridor leading from the cabin porch toward the forest edge, crossing the path down to the ravine. This meant Jenna or her phone had moved outside the cabin and headed north between approximately 9:40 and 10 p.m. To verify the feasibility of the cabin ravine entrance journey, Kincaid conducted movement simulations by vehicle and on foot. He drove to the cabin, set his watch and walked straight to the strongest signal point indicated by the cell site model. Result: approximately 4 minutes to reach the forest edge, and an additional 6 minutes to reach the head of the ravine, totaling 10 minutes of moderate-paced walking in light snow. If Jenna had actually left the cabin at 9:48 p.m., then 9:58 p.m. perfectly aligns with the time her device appeared in the signal corridor near the forest. Conversely, if the phone was in someone else's possession, the cabin ravine journey still matches the final ping timing, only changing the carrier. After establishing the plausibility of the 9:58 p.m. marker, Kincaid returned to analyzing Mara's old statements to determine whether she had an unaccounted-for time period during this window. Mara's 2011 statement indicated she was in the cabin from about 9 o'clock to 9:15, heard a small sound but did not see Jenna, then left the cabin to check around 12:20 a.m. after Elise called reporting no contact with Jenna. However, the statement made no mention of where Mara was from, approximately 9:15 to 10 p.m., when cross-referencing Mara's phone data, Kincaid discovered that her device showed no activity during the final 45 minutes of the ninth hour, approximately 9:10 to 9:55 p.m., a gap that nearly perfectly matched Jenna's phone activity corridor. Notably, the message Mara sent Jenna at 8:52 p.m. was also her last message of the evening, with no further activity until after 10 p.m., by which time Jenna's signal had disappeared. The investigator determined that if Mara left the cabin after 9:15, she had ample time to travel to the 9:58 ping location, interact with Jenna in some way, and return to the cabin before Elise's first contact at 10:30 p.m. To test this hypothesis, Kincaid simulated the route from cabin to ravine and back, a total of approximately 24 minutes on foot, if the person was familiar with the terrain and careful to avoid leaving obvious tracks. This meant Mara, with 45 minutes of unaccounted presence at the cabin, could fully have completed that journey without being seen. Kincaid further compared theoretical and actual times by running 3 additional models based on walking speed in 2011 snow conditions, average adult female speed, and the speed of someone anxious or deliberately moving quickly. All 3 models yielded results between 18 and 30 minutes, reinforcing the feasibility of a cabin-ravine-cabin round trip entirely within the 9:10 to 9:55 p.m. window, the exact period during which no witness could confirm Mara's location. When compared with Elise's data, the investigator uncovered an additional detail. Elise had stated that the 9:50 p.m. message may have been read, but was uncertain, which aligns with the possibility of the phone leaving the cabin at that time and being taken to an area with better signal. The new data led to an important conclusion. The entire sequence of Jenna leaving the cabin coverage area and moving to the final 9:58 p.m. ping location fell squarely within the unaccounted time period in which Mara could not prove her presence. When all these elements were placed on the comprehensive analysis board, cell site pings, route simulations, real-time durations, old statements, Mara's absence, a first technical conclusion since 2011 was established. The journey leading to the 9:58 p.m. ping could not have occurred without the involvement of a third party, and the person whose timeline most closely matched that sequence was Mara Quinn. With the in-depth timeline reconstructed and the near-perfect alignment between Mara Quinn's unaccounted absence and Jenna's 9:58 p.m. signal corridor, Detective Daniel Kincaid moved to the elimination analysis phase to narrow down to the sole suspect using multi-layer exclusion. First, he re-evaluated the hypothesis of a stranger appearing in the Mill Creek Road area on the evening of December 20, 2011. The original file had noted the area as isolated, heavily snow-affected, with no recorded vehicles passing except local residents. Kincaid rechecked traffic patrol reports and limited license plate data collected at the Livingston Town Gate. No unfamiliar vehicles appeared between 7 p.m. and 11 p.m. Additionally, any stranger approaching the cabin would have left footprints or tire tracks in fresh snow. Yet the entire ground around the cabin showed no such traces beyond minor anomalies, most likely caused by cabin occupants. Therefore, the stranger hypothesis was completely eliminated. The wild animal hypothesis was also reassessed. If Jenna had left the cabin and encountered a bear, wolf, or large animal, the incident would have left clear evidence: blood, drag marks, scattered items, or disturbed snow trails. However, the 2011 SAR team and subsequent rechecks found no signs of attack or animal-related movement. Furthermore, the 9:58 p.m. ping indicated the phone was still functional and undamaged, contradicting an animal attack scenario. Thus, the large animal accident hypothesis was ruled out. The lone accident hypothesis, Jenna leaving the cabin alone and meeting with misfortune, was largely dismissed during the 2011 search phase, but Kincaid re-evaluated it with the new data. If Jenna had fallen into the ravine, broken through ice, or slipped down a slope, Fleur the next morning, would likely have detected a heat signature. Moreover, to reach the ravine at night, Jenna would have had to leave the cabin without a coat, and no reasonable explanation for this was found in the technical data or statements. Finally, a cabin ravine accident journey would have left footprints or drag marks. Yet the snow around the cabin was completely undisturbed. The lone accident hypothesis was therefore eliminated. Kincaid next assessed the possibility of a third party in the area, such as a hiker, hunter, or camper. Mill Creek Road in winter saw virtually no such activity. Local 2011 hunting permit records confirmed no one registered to hunt in the area that day. Additionally, no resident reports mentioned strangers walking in the vicinity. Combined with cell site data, no mobile devices other than Jenna's and Mara's registered pings in the area during the critical time frame. Thus, the unknown third-party hypothesis was also ruled out. With all peripheral possibilities eliminated, Kincaid focused on factors directly related to Mara Quinn. Behavioral alignment. Mara was the last person to confirm presence in the cabin on the evening of December 20th, and the only one unable to provide objective proof of her whereabouts from 9:10 p.m. Temporal alignment. This gap precisely matched Jenna's phone activity window, consistent with a possible journey to the ravine and back without drawing attention. Locational alignment. Not only did the 9:58 p.m. ping fall within a corridor compatible with movement from the cabin, but the cabin soil also matched 90% with ravine soil, a location an ordinary person would have no reason to visit on a snowy night unless directly connected to the events leading to the disappearance. Relational alignment. Internal tension between Jenna and Mara was documented through messages, Mara's mild controlling behavior in prior exchanges, and slight changes in her statements regarding the timing of when Jenna may have entered the cabin, but was not seen. Taken together, all behavioral, temporal, locational evidence converged on a single direction. Mara had potential motive, clear opportunity, and an unaccounted time period that perfectly aligned with every key marker in the new timeline. With this conclusion, Kincaid prepared a comprehensive search warrant application for Mara Quinn's current residence in Spokane, Washington. The application included updated cell site analysis, soil spectroscopy comparison, reconstructed timeline, recovered photo data, and all discrepancies in prior statements. This was the first step toward gathering additional physical or technical evidence to determine Mara's role in Jenna Hale's disappearance, the sole remaining suspect after comprehensive elimination. With the completed case file and solid technical argument, Detective Daniel Kincaid coordinated with the Spokane Police Department and the Park County Prosecutor's Office to obtain a search warrant for Mara Quinn's current residence in Spokane, Washington. The warrant was approved based on three main grounds: temporal match, locational match, inconsistencies in statements and relationship. The search was conducted at 6:40 a.m. on a late April 2024 day, following standard nonviolent approach procedures. Mara cooperated as authorities entered, but appeared flustered when informed that the search scope included all personal property, digital devices, and paper records related to the period she lived with Jenna in 2011. During the review of Mara's home office, investigators discovered a folded Montana topographic map in a lower drawer. What drew attention was not the map itself, but a series of red and blue markings, including a small circle precisely at the location of Mill Creek Ravine, the newly identified point from soil spectroscopy and cell site modeling. Mara claimed the map was merely a keepsake from her time in Montana, but the ballpoint pen marks showed inconsistent fading, indicating many notations were made after 2015. This was the first indirect evidence that could not be explained by normal living reasons. While searching the winter gear closet, investigators seized a pair of dark fabric gloves stuffed deep behind a toolbox. The glove's surface showed reddish-brown soil streaks. Soil samples were collected on-site using forensic kits for comparison. The Spokane laboratory performed a preliminary simple spectroscopy analysis, which initially showed mineral characteristics similar to the ravine soil group previously identified in Montana. Although in-depth analysis was needed for a definitive conclusion, the initial match was a strong indicator that Mara may have directly contacted the ravine environment during the period close to the disappearance. In another cabinet drawer, investigators found a diary-style notebook without recorded years, but containing numerous passages describing Mara's psychological state while living with Jenna. Some entries expressed irritation, feelings of being alienated, and unable to tolerate being ignored in her own home. One page mentioned that argument that night and the look that made everything spiral out of control, though without specific dates. Although the notebook did not explicitly name the event, it demonstrated significantly stronger internal conflict than Mara had previously admitted. Investigators seized all of Mara's old digital devices, including 2 laptops from 2011-2014, 3 external hard drives, and an older phone stored in a plastic box. These devices had never been analyzed before, as they were outside the scope of prior warrants. Using 2024 technology, Kincaid requested deep deleted data recovery from the external drives, particularly messages, photos, and text files potentially related to the night of Jenna's disappearance. On the second external drive, technicians recovered a manually deleted but not fully overwritten text file diary entry. The file contained descriptions of a mistake that cannot be undone. It shouldn't have happened on the porch, and hidden so no one would find it, though no names were mentioned. When cross-referenced with the reconstructed timeline, the content strikingly aligned with the inference that the incident leading to the disappearance occurred right outside the cabin door. Additionally, on the same drive, a recovered though very blurry photo of a 2011 Mill Creek area map showed a waypoint mark near the ravine, matching the exact coordinates indicated by soil spectroscopy. These data points were no longer speculative, but formed a very strong chain of behavioral evidence. Simultaneously, the Montana State Laboratory Soil Analysis Report confirmed that the soil sample taken from the gloves seized in Spokane matched 92% with the ravine soil sample, exceeding the 90% match of the cabin sample, and sufficient to establish a physical connection between Mara and the ravine area. The investigative team compiled all new evidence. The map marked with the ravine location, gloves containing ravine soil diary documenting conflict, deleted diary file describing a mistake at the cabin porch, and the map photo with the mysterious waypoint. Combined with Mara's unaccounted time period, aligning with Jenna's 9:58 p.m. ping, along with historical inconsistencies in her statements, Kincaid reported that the legal threshold for issuing an arrest warrant had been met. The complete case file was forwarded to the Park County prosecutor, and within 48 hours, an official arrest warrant was signed, marking the most significant turning point since Jenna Hale's disappearance in 2011. The arrest warrant was executed on the morning of May 3, 2024. When the federal investigation team and Spokane police approached Mara Quinn in the parking lot behind the apartment complex where she worked part-time, the arrest took place without resistance. Mara appeared surprised but did not resist, only repeatedly asking why now while being handcuffed, and read her Miranda rights. She was immediately transported to the Spokane Police Department interrogation room, where Detective Daniel Kincaid and a supporting investigator from Park County were already waiting with the entire case file organized into evidence groups. The interrogation began with Mara continuing to deny any involvement and insisting that everything was just a coincidence. But Kincaid did not take an accusatory approach. Instead, he methodically presented each layer of evidence in the logical order built throughout the reinvestigation. First, the timeline, cross-referenced timestamps between Mara's statements, Elise's statements, gas station camera data, and especially the gap in Mara's whereabouts from 9:40–10:25 p.m., which matched the last ping of Jenna's phone at Mill Creek Road at 9:58 p.m. Mara fell silent but began showing signs of wavering. Kincaid then presented the soil spectroscopy evidence group, comparing soil samples from the 2011 cabin, samples from the ravine area, and soil seized from gloves in Spokane. The report showed a 92% match with the ravine, which Kincaid emphasized was impossible unless you had actually been there. forcing Mara to confront irrefutable scientific conclusions that could not be deflected with vague explanations. Next came the geolocation evidence group, presented via a large projected map, cell site analysis of Jenna's device signals, and the distance advantage from the cabin to the ravine were reconstructed, showing that someone had to have traveled the exact route, later marked similarly on the map, seized from Mara's home. Finally, Kincaid introduced the physical evidence, the marked ravine map, the notebook containing contradictory entries, and the recovered text file describing the mistake on the cabin porch. At this point, Mara could no longer maintain composure. She asked for water, her hands trembling slightly, repeatedly avoiding eye contact with the investigators. When Kincaid stated that every piece of objective evidence leads back to you, but only you know what really happened that night, Mara began to cry, covering her face with both hands. After several minutes of silence, she admitted that something did happen, but insisted it was not intentional murder. When invited to give a full account, Mara began her statement. Jenna and she had gotten into an argument on the cabin porch sometime after 9:40 p.m. According to Mara, the conflict started when Jenna announced she would move out after the holiday break and stop contributing to cabin expenses, which Mara viewed as betrayal because she had shouldered most of the costs during that difficult winter. The argument escalated. Jenna raised her voice and turned to go inside to grab her things, with Mara following to continue arguing. At the threshold, Jenna pushed Mara's hand away, and according to Mara, that was when Jenna slipped on the thin layer of snow, fell off the edge of the porch, and struck her head hard against the wooden corner near the steps. Jenna lost consciousness immediately. Mara said she panicked, called Jenna's name with no response, and believed Jenna was dead. Instead of calling 911, an action that might have saved Jenna's life, or at least documented the incident as an accident, Mara stated she was afraid of being charged with intentional injury because everything would look like I attacked her, especially given the ongoing argument. In a matter of tense minutes, Mara decided to drag Jenna's body inside the cabin to avoid it being seen from the road. After calming down somewhat, she used her own vehicle to transport Jenna to Mill Creek Ravine, a place she knew from their summer hiking trips. Mara stated she placed Jenna near a large solitary tree about 45 meters off the main trail, then covered the body crudely with dry branches and leaves, intending to let nature take care of the rest. Kincaid asked her to describe in detail the route taken, parking location, access point to the ravine, and sequence of actions from leaving the cabin to returning home. Mara provided details that matched the location and timing simulation data with startling accuracy. When asked why she hid everything for 13 years, Mara said that at first she thought the incident would be treated as a disappearance in the woods. But as the investigation expanded and SAR teams searched the entire area, she became increasingly panicked and felt compelled to continue the cover-up. Mara denied any intentional violence and maintained that the fall was accidental, but she admitted to moving and concealing Jenna's body, abandoning the victim without seeking medical help, and attempting to stage the scene to hide the truth. Kincaid asked her to sign the fully recorded and video-documented interrogation transcript. Before signing, Mara asked only one question: if I had called 911 that day, would everything have been different? Kincaid did not answer. The statement was completed after 4 continuous hours, forming the central document for the criminal prosecution file in the next phase of the case. Immediately after Mara Quinn's statement was recorded and preliminarily cross-checked against investigative data, Detective Daniel Kincaid coordinated with the Park County Sheriff's Office to launch a body recovery operation at Mill Creek Ravine, as the statement provided relatively clear coordinates of where Mara had left the body on the night of December 20th, 2011. A specialized crime scene team, along with a K-9 unit trained in human remains detection, was mobilized from Bozeman and moved into the ravine area under steep, rocky terrain with thick layers of decaying leaves, a very difficult location to access. Kincaid compared Mara's description, a solitary standing tree, separated from the trail by more than 40 meters, on the side with a natural gully slope, with topographic maps, and the team identified the three most likely matching locations, creating a much narrower search zone than the 2011 scope. When the K9 team began deploying in a spiral pattern from the access point, one of the cadaver dogs named Ranger gave a strong reaction on the eastern downslope area, where the leaf litter was unusually compressed and showed signs of prior soil disturbance, even after more than a decade. Ranger barked repeatedly, marking an area roughly over 1 meter in diameter. This was a characteristic response to deep decomposition odor in soil, though the long time span made the intensity very low. The team immediately cordoned off the area and began careful manual excavation to avoid damaging any remaining bone structures or potential evidence. The first layer revealed only tree roots and rock fragments, but at a depth of about 25–30 centimeters, the technician's shovel struck something hard and linear. Upon closer inspection, it was a long bone fragment, highly likely a human tibia. The entire area was immediately expanded using standard perimeter methodology, and within 40 minutes, the scene team located the complete but disarticulated skeletal structure, arranged naturally as expected after decomposition. Alongside the remains, several personal items appeared: a waxed cord bracelet that Jenna commonly wore, remnants of a decayed fabric bag, an oxidized metal zipper, and a cracked cell phone with completely dead battery. These items were immediately sealed at the scene in inert gas evidence bags. Each bone sample was placed in individually coated containers. Notably, the forensics team recovered several synthetic fabric fibers, still retaining dark red color, matching the description of the jacket Jenna wore on the night she disappeared according to the Emigrant gas station camera footage. This discovery strongly corroborated the accuracy of Mara's statement regarding the location where she left the body, as the actual site matched almost exactly with the position Kincaid had marked on the map, based on her description. The entire scene was documented in 3D, using portable LiDAR equipment to record the relative positions of bones, items, and soil structure. The remains and evidence were then transported by specialized vehicle to the University of Montana Forensic Lab for identification via dental records and DNA, as well as trauma assessment on the skull bones, which could confirm or refute the sequence of events Mara described. The search and recovery operation concluded after more than 5 hours of work, and Kincaid noted in his report that the location of the body discovery directly matches the self-incriminating statement of the suspect, marking the first step in reclassifying the case from unresolved missing person to established homicide scene. At the University of Montana Forensic Lab, the expert team began analyzing all recovered remains and evidence from Mill Creek Ravine to determine cause of death, compare it with Mara's statement, and reconstruct the injury mechanism. First, examination of the skull revealed a linear fracture running from the right temporal region toward the posterior parietal bone, with characteristics typical of impact against a hard, non-sharp surface, consistent with the wooden edge or porch step Mara described. Forensic experts determined the extent of the fracture, and the pattern of small fragments at the edges indicated a forceful impact that occurred while the victim was alive or immediately before circulatory arrest. No additional signs of violence were found on the long bones, no knife marks, no secondary fractures from impact, and no defensive wounds, supporting the hypothesis that the victim lost the ability to resist almost immediately after the fall. Some small bones in the hands and wrists showed displacement consistent with natural decomposition and animal scavenging, without forensic relevance to cause of death. No unusual injuries were noted in the ribcage or spine area. Additionally, the forensic team evaluated environmental factors, Montana's December weather, with extremely low temperatures, high humidity, and strong winds, indicating that even if Jenna had not died immediately from the impact, progressive hypothermia would have led to death within 1–3 hours, especially if the victim was unconscious, without medical aid, and without any heat source. Although hypothermia cannot be measured on skeletal remains, the environmental report and condition of recovered clothing reinforced expert opinion that weather was a major contributing factor to death. Soil residue analysis on the jacket fabric showed the victim had been placed directly on cold ground shortly after the incident, consistent with Mara's statement that she dragged Jenna off the porch before vehicle transport. Furthermore, forensic pathologists concluded there were no signs of active violence, such as beating, strangulation, or use of a weapon. The official cause of death was recorded as traumatic brain injury, leading to loss of consciousness and death under severe hypothermic conditions, compatible with the sequence of events Mara described. The technical report was forwarded to the Park County Prosecutor's Office, allowing them to construct a consistent argumentative file. Jenna's death may have originated from an unintentional incident, but the subsequent chain of actions, not calling for help, moving the body, concealing the scene, staging a disappearance, constituted serious criminal conduct, particularly given the ultimate outcome. When the preliminary hearing began in Livingston in October 2024, the prosecution presented the chain of evidence in a tightly structured manner, first establishing the timeline using cell site data and the 9:58 p.m. ping, next, soil spectroscopy, proving the suspect's presence at the ravine, then physical evidence from Mara's home, such as the map, gloves, and computer data. Finally, the forensic report confirming the cause of death consistent with the statement, while simultaneously supporting the argument that the outcome could have been different had timely medical assistance been provided. The prosecution also emphasized the concealment behaviors, deliberately removing the body from the cabin, abandoning it at the ravine, notifying no one, participating in the initial search as an innocent party, and maintaining active deception for 13 years. 3D images of the ravine scene, simulated travel routes from the cabin, and theoretical vs. actual timing comparisons were presented to prove Mara had sufficient time to carry out the entire sequence during the period when she could not account for her whereabouts. In contrast, the defense chose to focus on the accident, no intent to cause injury argument, stressing that Jenna fell due to slipping on snow rather than violent impact, that Mara's panic was a momentary psychological reaction, not deliberate harm, and that the concealment occurred in a state of distress and fear of wrongful accusation. The defense also attempted to downplay the legal significance of items like the journal and map, claiming they were old and did not prove criminal conduct. They questioned the ability to date the map markings and argued that soil spectroscopy only showed a degree of match, not definitive action. However, the prosecution countered by pointing out that it is the synthesis of all evidence, not any single item, that is decisive. The coincidence of timing, location, concealment behavior, and the evolving statement over the years formed a consistent inferential structure. After 2 weeks of hearings, the jury evaluated the evidence under the beyond a reasonable doubt standard. They considered the content of the confession, cross-referenced it with forensic data and 2024 technological findings, and particularly valued the precise match between the statement and the actual body location, a detail only someone present at the scene in 2011 could have known exactly. Although the defense tried to maintain the accident argument, the jury concluded that intent did not lie in the fall itself, but in the subsequent chain of concealment actions that obstructed investigation and directly prevented medical aid, leaving Jenna no chance of survival. With those considerations, they determined the evidence was sufficiently weighty to hold criminal liability at a serious level, paving the way for deliberation and sentencing. At the sentencing hearing held at Park County Court on the morning of November 12, 2024, after 3 days of closed deliberation, the jury delivered the final judgment against Mara Quinn based on the complete forensic evidence, technological data, confession, and concealment behavior spanning more than a decade. Before sentencing, Mara was allowed a brief statement. She acknowledged responsibility for not calling emergency services and for concealing Jenna Hale's body, but once again insisted the initial incident was an unintended accident. However, the court affirmed that Mara's subsequent actions, deciding to move the body, erase traces, file a false missing person report, participate in the search as a witness, were deliberate, prolonged, and intentional, seriously impacting law enforcement's ability to investigate and depriving the victim of her only chance of survival. The court convicted Mara Quinn of involuntary manslaughter for causing a situation leading to Jenna's death through gross negligence and intentional failure to immediately summon medical assistance, sentencing her to 15 years imprisonment. Additionally, the court convicted her of tampering with evidence, concealment of a human body, sentencing her to 8 years imprisonment due to moving the body from the scene, intentionally concealing it, and staging a disappearance to obstruct investigation. The two sentences were ordered to run consecutively, resulting in a total of 23 years imprisonment at the Montana State Women's Facility. Defense counsel filed intent to appeal the sentence, but the judgment took immediate effect regarding incarceration. Following the sentencing, the Park County Sheriff's Office held a press conference, releasing the comprehensive investigation summary covering the entire 13-year process, the 2011 search efforts, the stalled period and case closure, the reasons the case was added to the cold case list, and especially the 2024 technological breakthrough involving reanalysis of cell site data, soil spectroscopy, and recovery of deleted digital data. The report also emphasized that the case serves as clear proof that missing person files are never truly closed, and that new technology can completely transform understanding of seemingly hopeless cases. In conclusion, law enforcement determined that Mara's account sequence fully aligned with technical and forensic evidence. The incident began with an argument on the cabin porch. The fall caused unconsciousness, extreme weather eliminated any survival chance, and the act of moving the body to Mill Creek Ravine prevented resolution for a long time. After Jenna's remains were positively identified via dental records and DNA comparison, the official file was reclassified from missing person to closed, homicide resolved. By the end of November 2024, the case file was fully closed after completion of all legal procedures, investigation reports, forensic documentation, and sentencing records were archived in Park County's historical files. After 13 years of interruption, the disappearance of Jenna Hale was finally concluded with a clear resolution, marking one of the successfully solved cold cases thanks to the persistence of investigators and advances in forensic technology. The story of Jenna Hale's disappearance reflects many very real issues in contemporary American society, especially in mountainous states like Montana, Wyoming, or Colorado, where harsh weather conditions, sparse populations, and many young people must cohabitate to reduce housing costs. One of the most important details is the prolonged conflict in the isolated space between Jenna and Mara. The scene of the two arguing on the cabin porch against the backdrop of a Montana winter, darkness, financial pressure, and pent-up emotions shows how small conflicts can become dangerous when not addressed healthily. In reality, American psychologists warn that social isolation and economic stress increase the risk of explosive conflicts, especially in shared living households. The lesson: transparent communication, clear boundaries, and early help seeking are key to preventing unintended consequences. Another detail with strong ethical weight is the decision not to call 911 after Jenna was injured. This is a common mistake in many real situations. People driven by fear, concern about being blamed, or fear of implication choose concealment over seeking help. But in the United States, medical experts and attorneys all stress that calling emergency services is always the legally and ethically preferred action. Even when the caller fears being misunderstood, delay can cost the victim their only chance of survival and make legal responsibility far heavier. Finally, the story underscores the role of modern forensic technology, such as cell site analysis and recovery of deleted data. Reality in America shows, no matter how long the truth is buried, today's technology still has the power to bring it back to light. This serves as a reminder that transparency, honesty, and timely help-seeking are always the safest path in any situation. Thank you for following the entire 13-year journey of unraveling this case. If you found the story helpful, Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue joining us for the next files. See you in the next video, where we will continue exploring cases that seemed forever forgotten, but were ultimately brought back into the light.